Good morning, everyone. Thank you all as you're joining us. Please, if you have not already, chat in your name, your organization, and why you're joining us today. I see a few folks here coming in. Emily, welcome from the American Red Cross. Kelly, thank you for being here today. A few other names. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making the time. My name is Martha Cortez, and I am the Managing Director of Strategic Partnerships here at KIPP Indy Public Schools. I'm grateful to be able to share this space with all of you today to reconnect, reflect, and celebrate the amazing work that is happening across our 3 schools and our community of Martindale-Brightwood. Before we get started, I want to take a few moments to share some gratitude. First of all, thank you to our title sponsor and neighbor, Piper Logistics. The Piper Logistics team is located a stone throws away from our high school, and we have experienced firsthand the impact of their ongoing partnership and investment in our community. A big thank you as well to the KIPP Indy staff working behind the scenes to make sure you all have a great experience this morning. And finally, thank you, all of you, again, for taking the time to join us. We are grateful to have in the audience representation from local businesses, leaders of organizations that have been cornerstones in our community for decades, partners impacting the Indianapolis community at large, and our esteemed appointed and elected city and state officials. As we've grown as a network, we have created opportunities for our partners to stay connected with the work that is happening across our 3 schools. Every other year, we traditionally host a breakfast event in the fall to reconnect and celebrate the brilliance of our students and staff. Given the current environment, this year we are hosting this brief virtual meetup. However, as we continue to receive guidance from state and local entities, we will share more information about our fall event. We're looking forward to being able to host all of you in person at our traditional breakfast event in September. As part of today's program, we will share the virtual stage with some of our amazing students, families, staff, community partners, and local and state leaders. To start, we will share a video that centers the voices and experiences of our most important stakeholders. After the video, we will transition to a panel discussion with several key leaders from the Martindale-Brightwood neighborhood, the city, and across the state. Our esteemed panel will provide insight into some of the current educational challenges, successes, and opportunities to highlight the specific ways that you can play a meaningful role in the work ahead. We want this morning to be as interactive as possible. Feel free to use the chat function, and if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A tab, and a member of our team will be able to help you. With that, I welcome you to sit back, relax, and enjoy listening and learning from our amazing team and family that truly make KIPP Indy Public Schools a joyful place to learn.
KIPP dispels the whole one-size-fits-all approach. Here, we meet the children where they are, we tap into their passion, and then we challenge them to aspire to even greater heights.
This year we have the privilege of educating 1,300 students across 3 schools, elementary, middle, and high school, all of which are located in the heart of Martindale-Brightwood on the near northeast side of Indianapolis. We strive to run a network of schools that amplifies our community strengths and provides an excellent, well-rounded education for our students that ultimately leads to students having maximum options in life.
The Edna Morton Christian Center has been a proud partner with KIPP for close to 10 years. We pride ourselves in being one of the stronger partners, both from an out-of-school time opportunity as a 21st century community learning center, but also as a more comprehensive supportive partner. Here within Martindale-Brightwood, the community and neighborhoods overall, the community is more than, is the sum of all its parts. And schools obviously are a critical, integral piece to that, and I believe that KIPP has fully embraced that responsibility.
We also believe that we should be supporting the whole child. And so all of our schools are staffed with social workers. We partner with a variety of neighborhoods and leaders in the community to ensure that we're providing wraparound supports for students and families to help remove barriers to their education, to help support students with different needs, and to ultimately make sure that all of our students that walk through our door are able to access their education and are able to unlock their potential in their future.
They should not have to go outside of their community to gain access not only to a high quality education, but to high quality jobs and careers that'll keep them engaged and in this community and help us really transform the way we need to.
There's people here that are going to help you get into college. There are people here that are going to push you to get to be the best that you can be. Miss Michael had set me up some Zooms with people from Howard, Harvard, and it was just like something that you would not expect from being in 9th grade. So I think like it's like pushing me to actually want to go to college even more.
Bryce came to KIPP when he was in 6th grade, and now he is a sophomore at Purdue University in West Lafayette. KIPP Through College made Bryce aware of different scholarships that were out there. And for me as a parent, knowing that he has positive people in his life that are making sure that, you know, he's putting his best self forward, it just does my heart well.
We firmly believe that our classroom should be filled with joy, which means rigorous learning, but it also means curiosity-stoking curriculum to engage them during their days and really motivate them as they think about their future.
KIPP Indy Legacy High has been a good fit for me because their education pushes me to become a better person.
Well, what we want to do is make sure that our students are able to truly live a life of choice, right? And what we know is that them being able to develop intellect at a really high level is going to be necessary for that to happen. We want no door to be closed to them. I think we see every kid that walks in as someone who's going to be able to transform the world in a powerful way, right? And I say powerful meaning we strive to make sure that whatever it is that student wants to do or feels called to do with their life, they're able to do, and through that, live out the legacy we think will be truly transformative.
When I think about our future, I always think about our students first. Our students, especially in the midst of the unprecedented challenges that we faced over the past year, are our hope. And so everything that we do every day at KIPP Indy is about unlocking our students' brilliance and our students' potential, amplifying their strengths, providing more options, and ultimately playing the best possible role that we can to ensure that their future is as bright as they are. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andy Seibert, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director for KIPP Indy Public Schools. Whether you've been a longtime supporter of KIPP Indy and are really familiar with our work, or if you're learning about our work for the first time today, we are so grateful that you joined us this morning for this hour together. As the video highlighted, at KIPP Indy, we deeply believe that partnerships are core to everything we do. We know that we can only reach our mission's full potential through partnering effectively with students, with families, with neighborhood leaders, with the business community, and with other leaders in our city and state that care about and invest in education. While our central mission will always be about providing an excellent education to our students, we also feel an immense responsibility to play a meaningful role in the long-term vitality of our neighborhood and contribute to the health and vibrancy of our city. We can only do that work together. And so we're so thankful that you've joined us this morning to learn more about KIPP Indy and come on this journey with us. Given how central partnerships are to our work, we thought it would be fitting to spend the majority of our time together this morning fostering a dialogue with some of our closest partners. The leaders that are with us as panelists today are some of the most values-driven, student-centered colleagues I've ever worked with. And I'm so excited for everyone that's part of our time today to learn from their experience and insight. As part of that conversation, though, we also want to make sure that we're covering the most relevant topics to you. So to ensure that we're doing that, we're actually going to launch a quick poll for you to let us know the topic in education that you'd most like to hear about from our panelists this morning. And so we're going to have this be open for just about 15 or 20 seconds. But as the results come in, again, the conversation this morning, we want it to be a reflection of what you want to hear about and what would resonate most as you're learning and kind of leading in this moment as a community leader. So take about 10 more seconds, register your choice if you have not yet, and then we will go ahead and close the poll. So it definitely seems like the role of community is one of the top things that folks are interested in learning about. We'll absolutely make sure that we touch on that in a couple of different ways. We're going to talk about partnering with families. We're going to talk about the role that excellent educators play in our ecosystem as well. And we'll make sure that, particularly looking at the top 2 or 3 choices listed here, that we get to those questions fully. So thanks. I love all those, a year in, we're learning new tools with Zoom. So the polls function is one of those. I appreciate everybody participating, engaging along the way here as we get started this morning, and awesome to see what you are most interested in hearing more about. 1 year ago today, exactly, was our last in-person day of school with students during the 2019-2020 school year. Over this past year, educators everywhere in our city, across the country, across the world, have faced unanticipated challenges and had to overcome what have been unimaginable barriers. At KIPP Indy, while the challenges have been and certainly are significant, we've gained so much strength on a daily basis from the resilience of our students, the creativity and innovation that we've seen from our teachers and educators, and the commitment of our partners. And so in that spirit, we're going to kick off the panel. And I'd love for our panelists to kick us off by sharing both a brief introduction along with one observation that from this past year has given you the most hope and optimism. And so we're going to go ahead and start with Angie Moore, and then we'll kick it to Dr. Jenner, Brandon, Evan, and Barato. Angie, Dr. Jenner, Brandon, Evan, Barato, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are grateful that you are here with us. So Angie, I'll kick it to you.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm Angie Moore, and I have the privilege of serving as Vice President of Programming for Edna Martin Christian Center, which is a huge supporter of KIPP Indy. I am also a proud parent of a KIPPster, and love the work that they're doing and the commitment to the community and the partnership. And one of the things that I've learned over the past year is that a lot of work can be done without being in person. And so being remote does not mean that the mission, the values, and the visions that we have to stop.
It's off. Thank you so much, Angie. We'll kick it to Dr. Jenner.
Good morning, Andy. It's so great to be here this morning, and I look forward to listening and learning from the panel. I've high expectations looking at many of our panel members, but thank you for having me today. I've just really briefly, my past, I've been a teacher, a school administrator, a district administrator, serving a variety of roles, and then also served Ivy Tech Community College in a statewide role where I was tasked by Dr. Elserman to travel the state to really help communities build partnerships. So I love that you said that, Andy, in your kickoff, between K-12 higher ed workforce to ultimately support students and just give them the best opportunity for lifelong success. Following my time at Ivy Tech, I served Governor Holcomb for about a year and a half as his senior education advisor before having the opportunity to serve the state in this role. So great question on what has given me the most optimism. I would have to immediately say it is the people, because despite the incredible challenges that we have had, Indiana, our educators, our families, our students have really been remarkable through all of it. And we're starting to build a treasure trove of success stories and, celebrate the good that is happening. I think so often with COVID, man, it's hard to keep yourself lifted and up, but we're really trying to focus on the good. And that's because of the people of our state. The only other thing I'll add, and then we'll pass it, is I had the opportunity to see KIPP in action during COVID, visited with Andy and Martha, and that was just a fantastic experience. So again, appreciate that fall visit, Andy.
Hey, it's great to see everybody this morning. I am the CEO of the Mind Trust. We are a locally based education nonprofit that works really hard to grow the number of high quality schools in our city. We have the amazing opportunity to work really closely with KIPP in the great team and community that KIPP has worked so hard to assemble. So I was actually going to say the exact same thing that Secretary Jenner just said. I just really think that the people of our city in particular have been so resourceful and creative and resilient the last 12 months. I think that is specifically true for educators. And, I just wanted to make that very, very clear, just how hard and, how taxing the last 12 months have been. And to see the resilience and to see the creativity of school leaders and teachers, it has just been really inspiring. I would also say, one of the great things about our city is that we tend to come together to solve really big challenges. And I think that has never been proven out as much as it has the last year. If you think about civic leaders, if you think about elected leaders, if you think about neighborhood leaders, school leaders, if you think about the role of philanthropy, there's just been countless examples of folks coming together to, really help move our community forward. And I just think that that's, something that I hope we continue to embrace long after COVID.
All right. Good morning, Andy, and thank you as well, Martha, for and the KIPP community and community partners as well for this conversation. My name is Evan Hawkins. I get to serve as an IPS School Board Commissioner. I was elected in District 3 in November of 2018, sworn in January of 2019. Last year served as the Vice President on the board, and this year thank you to my colleagues on the school board, but I've had the opportunity to serve as the president for the current year. And that's just been an honor out of the gate. So I'm just thankful for that. Beyond the work I do in IPS, I also get to serve as an administrator at Marian University and have been there for about 5 years now. Also married and have 2 daughters who are school age as well. So again, excited to be here. The question about, hope, right? That's ultimately what resonates here. And, I think Dr. Jenner and Brandon, you've nailed it. I think you took my lines right there as well. But, the resiliency of students in particular. I can remember nearing this time last year, students right now, particularly seniors in high schools, are hyper-focused on that huge experience of prom or graduation. And, I can remember some crucial conversations with young people about feeling like that had been just, ripped away from them. And in reality, it was fascinating to just see how students sort of embraced that, and it has become that source of resilience. And students in 2020, regardless of Indianapolis, Indiana, or nationwide, are unified around this experience of 2020. And they, this will be something 30, 40 years from now when you're in an airport or in a community or walking and talking, I'm the class of 20, and what that means, and that sort of solidarity that is assembled from that experience. But I think of that as one major takeaway. I think the other is that, we think about the existing disparities, that particularly racial disparities and systems and institutions that were created that accelerated. This pandemic simply just laid bare those disparities that already existed. And what is so encouraging and what I'm so hopeful of is that, I think, Andy, a couple months ago, I had the opportunity to be a part of a conversation about the impact of institutions and systems and the relationship to the pandemic and what that means as we think about elections and voting and civic engagement and things of that nature. And so, I'm just incredibly encouraged by the young people, particularly, that have leveraged our past, our current state, and the realities of the pandemic and what that means going forward. And this is led and driven by young people, which is the most inspiring of all.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for participating in this opportunity. The worst part about being the final panelist to do introductions is that all the insightful, wonderful pieces for optimism have already been said, but I can ditto most of them. Again, Barato Britt, proud president and CEO of the Edna Martin Christian Center. I've had the privilege of serving this capacity since January of 2020. Oddly enough, at a time right when we started to deal with some of the many challenges that we're slowly starting to overcome. I have also been very blessed to be a part of this 80-year agency for the past 12 years. So my role and my work here has, part of the genesis of the KIPP and Edna Martin partnership, came through the work that we've been trying to, accomplish for the past several years. I'm also thankful that my professional history actually precedes all of that here in Martindale-Brightwood. I started my professional career at the Indianapolis Recorder, which is a very important, critical media that serves not just this community, but the African-American community in particular overall. So this community is very important and meaningful to me. And finally, I have a certain level of bias that you guys will probably hear throughout, as I am also a proud board member of KIPP Indy Public Schools. So I think, again, just summarizing a lot of what has been said, the one thing that continues to give me optimism is, first and foremost, the immediate response and the initial reactions to how we approach the pandemic, and KIPP playing, a very prominent role in the provision of supplies and resources, and already having a partnership in place where we could build additional wraparound supports for sustainability for families to do the best that we could, recognizing that there will be some impacts that we still deal with. Tell me that we're in a much better position than even, than we could have been had we continue to operate in a siloed type mentality that all too often permeates in community. To Brandon's earlier point, one of the things that does continue to give me optimism is exactly that. As we've all dealt with this crisis together, the one thing that we've been blessed to see is the remaining silos of competition or, political nonsense that keeps us away from really doing the work that we need to do have been knocked down, because we are all sharing in a collective struggle, recognizing that only together are we going to be able to really get us back on a more positive trajectory. But I think, what also continues to give me optimism is one of the things that we've also seen just even this year is the level of continued investment, positive movement, transformation that is happening in our community that is fortified by the continuing provision and work for high quality schools in our area. We're pretty rich in options, but making sure that those options are high quality, where parents can have access to gain to make sure that their students gain the best opportunities for, high quality education is one of the things that I'm truly optimistic about. And again, KIPP, as with our other school partners, are leading that role and complementing all of the transformative efforts that are already underway in Martindale-Brightwood. So, there's a significant challenge, but there's also significant opportunity for positive transformation and hope. And I'm just really thankful and pleased to be a part.
Absolutely. Barato, thanks. And to all the panelists, thanks for your introductions. And, again, in the midst of all of this challenge over the past year, it's our students' voices and our students' resilience and brilliance that has given us the most hope. And so just really appreciate you all sharing from your vantage point all of the different reasons for optimism. We have learned an immense amount over the past year. And to Barato's point, we've been focused on both removing barriers to learning, but then also sustaining a high bar of academic excellence, whether students are in person or participating virtually. To do that, we've deployed over 1,200 laptops and hotspots to students and families over this past year. We served thousands of meals when our buildings were fully closed for in-person instruction. And then we've innovated to support teachers with new ways to reach students. And so kind of building off of the kind of introductory question, as you think about the past year, what do you think will be the biggest takeaways from the past year that will impact how schools will operate going forward? And for this initial question, I'm going to kick it to Dr. Jenner, Brandon, and Evan, and then we'll have a couple of follow-up questions from there. So again, as you think about the past year, what have been your biggest takeaways that you think will impact how schools will operate going forward?
So Barato ended his introduction by saying we have significant challenge, but we also have significant opportunity. And I think that is absolutely where my mind is. When I think about, and I'll highlight just a couple things and then pass the mic on, but a couple of really, really obvious ones. And again, we could talk about each of these questions that you're going to propose, I'm sure we could talk about for hours, but a couple of highlights. I would say the acceleration of digital learning will likely only help us. We are in a digital environment, and pre-COVID, the reality is we had some schools in Indiana who had it and some who did not. And so that acceleration, and more than have it or not, it's using it well. And, using it, you said, Andy, you discovered that you could now do a survey on Zoom. the ability to interact the way we are and today even, that learning platform is there at any time whenever we need it. The other one that I'll hit on is, and you hit on this in your video, but the emphasis of supporting the whole child. That I think the time at home, we in some cases saw the academic needs. Teachers were meeting them, the very best way they could. But what we were hearing a lot about is their concern about a student's social, emotional, and behavioral learning. And just so the whole child and making sure we're considering all the pieces. And then the opportunity ahead is, I shared we're capturing a treasure trove of information with creative solutions, the innovativeness and the level of nimbleness that we have today that we didn't have. It's going to pay dividends, and I'll pass the mic from there.
So I think from my perspective, there are a lot of takeaways, but just really wanted to quickly highlight three. It was just clear a year ago that the education system and our community at large wasn't ready for something like this. And when we really started to dig into what does access to high quality Wi-Fi look like, what's the number of kids in our community that actually have a high quality device, and we had schools in our community where 60 or 70% of kids didn't have one or both of those. And we asked our schools to transition to virtual literally overnight. And there were months where kids in our community weren't getting any education because we as a community failed them and really haven't comprehensively figured out how do we move our community into the 21st century. It's 2021. The internet should be viewed as a utility, not a luxury. Having a device is essential. It's not a luxury. And, if we're honest with ourselves, this primarily impacted local communities of color. And, when you heard Commissioner Hawkins a few minutes ago say that COVID really just laid bare existing inequalities, what a stark example where, 60 or 70% of kids in a given school couldn't even learn at home because our community failed to give them the right kind of tools. So moving forward, it needs to be clear that there needs to be a comprehensive plan to get every single home in our community high-speed internet. And I think there's some early efforts on that. It needs to be clear that every kid needs a device because we're in the 21st century and you can't actually attach to a 21st century economy if you don't have those tools. I think my second huge takeaway was that large systems are very slow to change. And that's in particular true when you have a crisis. And what I saw, I think qualitatively and quantitatively, is that schools that are nimble, that have school level autonomy and really entrepreneurial leaders were able to move really quickly to meet these challenges in our community. And, I think I would include you all in that. I think that KIPP and a lot of, kind of small autonomous schools in our city were prime, actually national examples of, how you quickly transition here. And I think it just made me realize that large systems aren't created to move quickly. And I think, that created really stark differences relative to what schools were able to move really quickly to meet kids' needs. And I think, as system leaders, we had to examine that and, really ask ourselves, why was there a massive change in enrollment from last school year to this school year towards schools that were able to, move really quickly and really nimbly? And then how do we take that information and apply it to system level decisions moving forward? And then lastly, it was so obvious to us at the Mind Trust that prior to the pandemic, schools and communities were way too disconnected. And it was the communities like KIPP that had amazing partners like Edna Martin that were able to move quickly and figure out ways to collaborate to serve communities. And that's not true in a lot of places in our city. It's not true in a lot of cities in our country. And, if there's one lesson that we take away and try to apply to the system moving forward, it's that we got to break down those silos. And just because we think that school buildings are the only place where a kid can be from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., Like that doesn't have to be the reality moving forward. We have amazing community assets that have incredible relationships with our kids and our parents. And we need to figure out how to leverage those much more creatively and much more extensively than we have in the past.
It's hard to follow that, Brandon. We have three concrete examples like that. I think I would just kind of first and foremost acknowledge that, going to the transformation piece here, thinking about, the shift. You're right on. We think about systems, large systems moving slowly. I'm thinking about what it would have taken any large system perhaps to convert to a one-to-one district. It might have taken, a couple consultants. It could have taken a couple years to actually implement. And what was incredible to see was across the board, regardless of school, how quickly systems were able to adapt to become one-to-one districts. Distributing of Wi-Fi hotspots or collecting devices from one school, moving them around. I mean, definitely that was one of the things I think as a school board member in IPS, definitely seeing a system of this size and IPS and scale move as quickly as it did. Who are the students that need resources and access to technology now and move them? And again, like I said, this could have taken years and it was done as quickly as it was done. So what it tells me is that we can do really big things quickly because we've done that. I think all of us on the call that live and walk around and spend times in schools, we've all become COVID-19 experts in some form or fashion, whether it be PPE or whether it be how to move, logistics experts or whatever it might be, technology. Andy mentioned, the Zoom piece. We've all become skilled at this experience. So it tells me again that we are learning how to move quickly and adapt. And so how do we continue to leverage that going forward in this moment? And so we know that there are, and thankfully to our federal partners, we know that resources have been infused and continue to be infused and are coming. And so how do we leverage that sort of sense of urgency that we saw with regard to one-to-one technology and distribution and logistics, distribution of food and of resources and those things of that nature, maintain that intensity as we move through and we see these resources move into our community as a whole, and to continue to move in the direction that what I would say is responds to some of the challenges that we've seen from COVID, right? So discussion earlier reflecting on, the fact that these disparities were already here and they've gotten worse. Brandon, you mentioned enrollment, attendance, proficiency. In some cases across our system of schools across the city of Indianapolis and the state, we've seen shifts, we've seen dips. So how do we leverage the intensity that we have all become accustomed to really respond in a quick way, fast way to those issues and ensure that our communities, our students, our teachers, our educators are equipped to not only catch up, but to sustain, because, we don't know what the road rash or what the whiplash or the PTSD from this pandemic will be. Maybe there'll be white papers and studies in 3 to 5 years on that, but let's get going now, right? And so I'm incredibly encouraged by that. And so the sense that that we can leverage this experience. We've done this before, and let's just accelerate that energy. So that's something that I'm definitely really excited and hopeful for and optimistic about.
Thanks, Commissioner Hawkins and Brandon and Dr. Jenner as well. And Evan, where you left off around urgency is, a buzzword for us right now. And I think harnessing the focus and intense work that has had to happen over the last year as we think about moving forward is definitely on our mind. The other theme and what I heard from each of you was the power of partnerships. And the kind of concept of partnerships was the number one thing that from the poll earlier, everybody on the call expressed a desire to hear the most about. And so that's where we're going to head for this next portion, and really through 3 different lenses. First, through the lens of partnerships with families. Families of students and students' parents have always been students' first teachers. And over this past year, they've really become, in many ways, the primary teacher and liaison for a student's learning with so much virtual instruction happening. And so to kind of give us insight into the role that parents and families have played during this time and what it's been like, want to kick it over to Angie, who, as she shared during her introduction, is an incredible partner of ours, is an awesome community leader in Martindale Brightwood, and is also a parent of one of our 7th grade students who's incredible. And so Angie, would love for you to share just what your son's experience has been like at KIPP during this time of change, and what you think we should really be taking away about the power of partnerships between schools and families of students.
I think one of the proudest things that I can say is that having a KIPPster relieved some of the pressures I had. So in the previous school year, we had one that was in high school, so he was a senior, and we had Kendall, who had just recently transitioned to KIPP. And the expectations, the communication, and the connectivity that we had with Kendall was just outstanding. Teachers contacted us twice a day to make sure he was online, that he was able to get online if anything changed. The district and both districts, IPS and KIPP, did a great job of making sure we had the devices that we need and that we knew how to get repairs done if that was a necessity. And I think that was a big thing that people thought or just would, could have easily been, looked over. It was not just getting devices in the hands of people, it was also having people knowing how to utilize them and how to get them repaired. And fortunately, we didn't have anything damaged, but knowing that if there was something that broke, that we didn't have to figure out how to get it repaired, the cost of those things, we just knew to contact the school, reach out, hit that COVID email, and we could get a response. But for us, I think the biggest thing was knowing that those teachers were going to call, set an expectation for me as a parent, as well as him as a student, to know when to be prepared for that communication. They called once in the morning, they called once in the afternoon, or they would text. And if anything was off or he wasn't participating, or they felt that he just didn't seem like himself, we got that communication right away. And as a parent in the middle of a pandemic, Kendall is our youngest of 4. So I had one in IU, one is a senior, and I think Commissioner Hawkins spoke on that. There's no prom, there's no graduation, we're waiting daily to see, when these things are going to be decided upon. So dealing with him and trying to figure out him. And then we had one at IU and getting her back home, just knowing that his academic experience would not change. It was still consistent. He knew who his homeroom teachers were and what to expect. That gave us some relief. And then as we moved into the second, the new school year, the adjustments and things that were done to make that experience better were just phenomenal. And the fact that the school reached out to every parent and allowed us to comment and to share our experiences and see those things implemented. So we learned that, the day might be too short, the day might be too long, that some kids get done sooner than later. So there was an actual buy-in to what we needed as a family, and then what the students needed. So I think that was, kind of goes to, what we're talking about. By having a smaller school that has the ability to make those decisions on, with the autonomy that they needed to serve their student body, made a bigger difference in how he perceived school, because he had just transitioned in. He was new to the school, but there was no gap in what the rigor, the requirements, and the expectations that the staff had of him to participate daily, just to be a student. And I think just knowing that this was all going on while there was racial unrest in the city, in the state, and in the country, and him being a young Black male, and them giving them space to be able to comment on what they thought was going on. And for the school to ask us, do you think we're doing enough? Are we strong enough on this commitment? As a parent, that allowed me to sleep at night and worry about, if they're going to be out and about and not know how to respond to someone. So, there were so many things going on in 2020. Commissioner Hawkins, you are definitely right. The class of 2020 has a resilience that is probably seen by very few people. Many of them were also born in 2001. So they were around when the towers fell. So these kids have seen and done some things that are exceptional already. So we expect great things out of them. But with this partnership, as a parent, I know that Kendall is getting the tools necessary to lay the groundwork for him to be a responsible adult.
Thank you so much, Angie. And, I think so much of what you shared is at the heart of what we're taking away as a network of schools. And part of what we're taking away is how important it is to be the best listeners we possibly can be to our students' most important people in their life, their family. And so we have gotten a lot better and strengthened our work as a result of families' feedback, and are really grateful for that. On the slide that is being shared right now, it highlights a little bit of our partnership with our strongest partner in the neighborhood that you've heard a number of different pieces about this morning, the Edna Martin Christian Center. What we have believed over a long period of time is that partnering with our community has to be at the very core of what we do as a network of schools. We're proud to be part of the fabric of the Martindale-Brightwood neighborhood, and we really believe that partnering effectively with community organizations is central to our ability to deliver fully on our mission. And so would love for Barato and Dr. Jenner to just share your perspective on why you believe it's critical for schools to partner effectively with neighborhood organizations and stakeholders, and what you believe some of the most important characteristics of successful school to community partnerships are that you have seen. So Barato, love for you to kick us off, and then we'll pass it to Dr. Jenner from there.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. I think in the most general sense, schools have to, especially in this day and age, recognize that the role that they play in the overall community fabric is much, much more than what happens inside the school walls. It is critical. It is the priority, the primary component of what helps make our community great. However, there is so much more that is needed as a beacon, as a place for our community to know that it's a trusted center where you're meeting certain outcomes, but you're also thinking about the larger community context that not only helps us as supplemental providers and supports to really get in and help affect some change, but it creates a certain level of buy-in that is going to be absolutely necessary for the community to have confidence that the schools that are in the community are really thinking about what's first and foremost in the best needs of the children and families, but the community at large. I think one of the things that continues to compel us to recognize and strengthen our partnership is that in terms of characteristics, the most successful school community partnerships for us are ones where school leadership really does embrace that role, recognizes the importance and the value of really understanding the surrounding community, not just being, a site that doesn't really connect with the overall community development strategies. And from day one, since our partnership, KIPP has really been focused and committed to understanding all of the different dynamics that are in Martindale-Brightwood and beyond. From there is very purposeful and meaningful alignment, not just with regard to the activities that we have as a partner, but with consideration of what is consistent with the overall quality of life plan. The KIPP Indy Legacy High School, for example, is not something that, Edna Martin and KIPP just decided we were going to try to introduce to the community. It was done with very significant diligence, very significant consideration, honest dialogue with the community about, is this one desired for our community? How does it relate to the overall quality of life plan, and what type of supports can we get from the community, recognizing that the schools by themselves can't be the be all, the end all per se. So I think, again, it starts with the acknowledgement and recognition of school leadership and the very purposeful efforts therein to make sure that you're aligning yourselves with community partners and stakeholders who want to be able to support in some way. From there, in order to make sure that those partnerships are more than just partners on paper, there has to be thorough, honest assessment of where each individual partner's strengths are, coupled with the level of transparency, being honest about some of the strengths and weaknesses of schools, so we can utilize our, the collective assets and resources we bring to bear to help make sure that we're strengthening, the areas where we all want to improve. And finally, again, the level of transparency, the level of openness, the level of access from that level of trust has, again, continued to create a more significant level of buy-in with community, where KIPP not only recognizes that it is not operating by itself, it does have an entire community around them, and the community does feel like this is a neighborhood school. The community owns, owns the successes and shares in trying to ensure that the challenges that KIPP and our partners face are met. So, I mean, again, it's a symbiotic relationship, but only because the school leadership and the school themselves have really made it a very purposeful effort to ensure that community considerations about how the community is trending, what is the trajectory of the community, is integrated in our overall approach. And we're just really thankful. I think that each of the panelists can attest to the fact that that does not happen that often, right? Having that type of transparent, leadership, transparent partnership is not something, it's something that is necessary, especially in communities such as ours, but it is unfortunately not something that happens as broadly as it needs to. And for our perspective, we're certainly spoiled and thankful that that has occurred. But we also look to try to utilize the model that we're trying to create as a means to try to convey what is important and necessary for other communities as they consider these partnerships.
So I'll jump in and start by zooming out a bit before zooming back into partnership. As we've listened to various stakeholders throughout the state, we often hear the what is happening in schools or the how it's happening. But the conversation that we're not hearing as often is why what we're doing really matters. And I hear that in the KIPP conversation, which I want to acknowledge. I really love that. But again, we need to remind ourselves why the work we're doing in K-12 really matters, because there's a direct link with a person's educational attainment and their quality of life, their health, their employment, their living wage. So what we do in the 13 years, what KIPP does in the 13 years, really matters for a student's lifelong, as Barato said a couple times, their trajectory ahead. The other thing I'll add is, with that 13 years of opportunity partnership, it just elevates everything possible in a school. And you know that. I think I'm preaching to the choir a little bit on this, but our schools across the state who have the solid partnerships between K-12 and higher ed. I think about that student who was on your video, the 9th grader who talked about already connecting to Howard and Harvard. Incredible. So the partnership, again, K-12, higher ed, and workforce and community partners, it is just so critical because we can't do it alone. 3 characteristics I'll hit pretty quickly. One is obvious. We all have to come to the table with a collaborative mindset, outlook, and just really be non-judgmental about the work, right? If students are our North Star, how and we know our why, how can we best get there? So often in some communities that don't have that synergy yet, there's a lot of finger pointing, which is so exciting to see the work here at KIPP Indy, because you all are just really working together. And again, the third one I'd say is mission focused, which again, I see completely here.
Dr. Jenner, Barato, thank you so much. And as we kind of complete our set of partnership-oriented questions, I want to talk a little bit about our partnership with IPS. And so, while KIPP Indy is a nonprofit network of public charter schools, we've also proudly partnered with the Indianapolis Public Schools District since 2015. And we really think the Innovation Schools model in Indianapolis is a powerful example of what's possible when traditional districts and public charter schools work together on behalf of students in neighborhoods. And so to Commissioner Hawkins on this one, feels appropriate to go to you on this question, sir. What do you believe makes the KIPP IPS partnership and others like ours successful? And from your perspective, what do you think the future holds for our city when it comes to collaborative school models and charter district partnerships specifically?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And I just want to, commend and thank Angelia, Barato, and Dr. Jenner for your remarks there. And Dr. Jenner, you mentioned, you used the phrase, or your North Star, right? And I think that fundamentally, when I think about the future, I'll take the big picture approach and kind of zoom back in as well as, our North Star, should be, regardless of school type, governance type, is all about every child having access to the opportunity to have an excellent education, be in an excellent school, and those schools and educational experiences occurring in every quadrant of our city, not specific to particular zip codes or quadrants of our community, where they're having access to learning environments that challenge them, that stimulate them, that connect them to the opportunities that they desire, right? So fundamentally, I think we've got to start there. And personally, for me, that is irrespective. That's, school type or governance type to me matters less if we're focusing on the whole child and the child being at the center of that. I think what I truly, admire and appreciate, and this really kind of goes back a few generations on the IPS school board is that commitment to partnership. And I think that's the key term as well, is partnership and collaboration is, we talk often about autonomy, right? And accountability and transparency. But in reality, schools that are able to adapt to the ever-changing needs of students, to adapt and to sort of implement or to leverage the skill sets of educators, KIPP is an example of that, of an agile and flexible organization that is able to transform itself to meet the needs of kids. And I think that's incredibly important, and I think is germane to and central to this partnership within IPS. And frankly, autonomy in general is a belief. It's a theory of action that IPS values, and the board particularly values as well. Is the sense that educators in the building are connected directly to the student, are connected directly to the parent or guardian, are connected to the community, and should drive the decisions that impact the children directly. And so, the partnership is key. And like I said, going forward, this is, again, we are all in the same boat, on the same bus, driving towards a world where every child, and honestly, we got a lot of work to do, and many of us will not see that through. This is a baton that will be has been handed off to us, and we will hand off to others behind us, coming to us. And so, staying focused on that and less on the other stuff is where this partnership continues to strengthen, because ultimately, if we stay child focused, that's the priority, right? So I'm encouraged. I think that again, Brado's and Angelia's comments about the integral relationship between Edna Martin and KIPP and the Martindale-Brightwood community is critical, and schools, and particularly school communities where those partnerships exist. We're seeing incredible things happen for young people. In my district, I get to, claim 2 of the 3 KIPP schools in my district. I'm going to slide the high school over a little bit because it's right on the border. But I also think about other community partners in District 3, like the Martin Luther King Center, that has such an embedded relationship with the school, James Whitcomb Riley, right around the corner. Those relationships mean something, and they're student-centered, student-focused, right? And so, I think it's a feather in the cap of our community when you see examples of those partnerships in place, again, that are North Star focused on the whole child and what's best for the child.
Commissioner Hawkins, thank you so much. And again, this is where we wanted to spend most of the time per the group's feedback today is on partnerships, and whether it's our partnership with IPS, our partnership in the neighborhood with Edna Martin, other community stakeholders, or importantly, our partnership with families. Partnership and the role that partnerships play for us is integral to everything that we're trying to do. Time has flown as we've been having fun here. So we're on our kind of arriving at our last question, which is going to be about talent and the role that excellent educators play. We, deeply value recruiting and retaining exceptional educators at KIPP Indy. And, to Commissioner Hawkins' point, there's nothing more important for our students at school than having a great teacher in every classroom. And so, Dr. Jenner and Brandon, you could kind of take us home with this question. What's your assessment of where we're at as a city and a state when it comes to valuing educators and fostering an environment where our best teachers and educators feel like they can develop as professionals and build a long-term career? So Dr. Jenner, we'll kick it to you first and then go to Brandon. I think we have about 2 minutes to wrap up, but appreciate your perspective on kind of where we're at with talent and valuing our educators in our city and state.
I tell you, in order to best serve students, communities in Indiana, we must have a robust teacher pipeline. It is critical. And as a state, we absolutely have some work to do. I'll point out a recent study, and I'll just refer to it since we're short on time, but you might take a look. The Department of Education and the Commission for Higher Education recently partnered with REL Midwest. It's a Midwestern research group on understanding our Indiana teacher pipeline. A couple data points I'll say. just 41% of students who entered an Indiana education program in 2010, 11, and 12 completed a bachelor's degree in education. This is what's going to give you cold chills. Only 1 in 6 students who began an education program entered our teaching profession. The other one I'll say really quickly is students of color made up 12% of those seeking education degrees, but only 6% of those licensed. And I know we're running short on time. This is one we could talk, we must address and we must hit hard on. We must support our teachers and build a pipeline that absolutely includes increasing teacher compensation. And I will keep saying it. It also includes elevating the profession. We have to celebrate the good work and how the difference-making opportunity that educators provide. And the third is we must attract more of our best and brightest to the profession, including candidates of color into our classroom and leadership positions. And again, I could go on, but Brandon, bring us home.
Yeah, so I think you're exactly right, Secretary Jenner, and I just want to draw everybody's attention to the stat here. 71% of KIPP Indy teachers share the racial background of their students. That needs to be celebrated, and it needs to be called out as potentially transformational for kids of color who oftentimes never see themselves reflected in their educators. I think on a more sober note, if you zoom out to see the entire state, only 7% of Indiana teachers are teachers of color. Did some research this week. If you look at Marion County school districts, the numbers are even more startling. There's a 55-point gap between the number of kids of color in our schools and the number of educators of color in our schools in Marion County. 5 out of our 11 school districts have workforces that have 6% or less classroom teachers of color, even though almost all of those districts, the majority of kids are students of color. And this is one reason why the Mind Trust and I personally feel so strongly about the growth of innovation schools and charter schools. The vast majority of new innovation schools and new charter schools in our city are led by Black leaders, just full stop, who directly reflect the racial backgrounds of our kids. There's research that says a Black or Latino school leader is then more likely to hire a racially diverse staff. And all those numbers are very, very true in the innovation schools in particular. And I just wanted to close with, I think we oftentimes really tend to take it for granted here in Indy, but we have the president of the IPS school board on this panel with a charter operator. There's not a city in the country where that would happen outside of Indianapolis. And I think because these partnerships now, have been going for several years, we take it for granted. We can't take it for granted. The cross-sector collaboration work has already been transformational and is gonna be what's going to move us into the next phase. If you think about how many kids IPS had in 1970, 100,000 kids. In 2011, they had 29,000 students. The growth of innovation schools is the way to strengthen the district. And if you think about where we are right now in IPS, there's more kids attending IPS schools in 2021 in the middle of a pandemic than any year since 2011. There's more kids attending public schools of all types in Indianapolis than any year since 1990. And it's driving results and it's driving strength across our system. And I just wanted to end on that note, how lucky and how incredibly blessed we are as a city to have this level of amazing collaboration across sectors.
And I know, Andy, you're about to close, but Brandon, and we will commit to highlighting this incredible work that is happening in Indianapolis with the partnership, because as Evan shared, and I wanted to interrupt him multiple times to say, yes, it is about high quality education, not about school type. Always about high quality education for kids. So we will celebrate this model across our state. And again, Andy, back to you. Just had to add that in.
Absolutely. Well, just so much gratitude for all of our panelists this morning. We are incredibly blessed to have phenomenal partners that are deeply invested in our students' futures, are deeply invested in the health and vitality of our neighborhood and our city. And for all of our guests this morning, I hope that you got a sense of how privileged we are to do this work in partnership, shoulder to shoulder with the talented and committed leaders that joined us this morning. So thank you all. To very quickly wrap us up, and I know we're right at time, I'm going to kick it over to our board chair, Stan Chen, to share a couple of final remarks and kick it to our vice chair, Regina Cross, to wrap us up for our last couple of minutes here. So Stan, I'll kick it to you to bring us home.
Great. Thanks, Andy. And thank you again so much to our panelists. I felt very honored to be able to sit in and listen in on all the horsepower that's on this call, and very privileged to be running the race alongside of all of you. My name is Stan Chen. I have the honor of serving as KIPP Indy's board chair. I've been a board member at KIPP for about 5 years, and I'm so passionate about our mission because I believe in the power of charter schools to be nimble and entrepreneurial, like Brandon was talking about, in addressing some of the unique opportunities that we have to educate our youth. But I also think it's so important that charters are truly accessible to all, and KIPP really lives up to that promise. So I hope today's programming has left you all more knowledgeable about the incredible work that KIPP Indy is leading, and also giving you a more nuanced perspective on the very real challenges facing education in our city. Today's event was made possible by the generous sponsors that you see on the screen. So on behalf of the board and our entire team, thank you all for your support. And let me pass it off to Regina to wrap it up.
Hi, Regina Cross. I am the vice chair of the KIPP Indy board. Thank you again for taking the time to spend with us today. I've been a member of the KIPP Indy board for 8 years and continue to support the work because of our kids, because of the belief that they are our kids, not kids in another neighborhood. And I truly believe that all kids deserve the ability to be able to dream, to pursue their every aspiration, and to touch their lives, their families, the communities. And that starts with education. It starts with curiosity. We can help to promote access and growth through our partnerships as a board, as a staff, as an Indianapolis community. And I'm really proud to be a part of that equitable solution that empowers families to do exactly that, and to release what I believe to be untapped potential into a world that's primed for new voices and perspectives. As we close out our time today, we are going to ask you to take a brief survey. The purpose of the survey is to gauge how you'd like to stay connected with KIPP Indy and the work that we're doing, and also to receive any feedback from the event today. It should only take about 2 minutes to complete, and we certainly appreciate your time in doing so. Other than that, the chat will have the link to the survey. Again, we appreciate your time, we appreciate your continued support, and hope that you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much again, everybody.